My name is Jay Ariola, and I'm your moderator. On behalf of our Bar Association, the 480 active lawyers who practice on the island of Guam, our President, Jacqueline Terlahi, and our Board of Governors, welcome to this presentation. We're glad to have with us our 3 Guam Bar members who are seeking office of the next elected Attorney General of Guam. And in ballot order, they are Gary Gumatauto, Doug Moylan, and Lily Camacho. We're going to have our opening statements by each of the candidates, give you a brief background with them. Then they'll each take turns answering the questions, most of which have been submitted by, all of which have been submitted by Guam Bar members. Our first candidate, number 1 on the ballot, is Gary Rain Francis Gumatauto. Gary graduated with a JD from Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia, and he received his bachelor's degree from Old Dominion University in Norfolk. He served previously as a deputy AG in the Civil Division and assistant deputy for the Solicitors Division. He's been the chair of the business department at the Guam Community College. He is an experienced private practitioner and corporate counsel with more than 25 years experience in litigation, contracts, commercial transactions, real property, insurance, and procurement. He is also a federally trained mediator. Gary has always been a legal advocate for our island's elderly, fighting for and defending them in all matters. He's known for his vigorous and aggressive work as a champion of the rights of those members in our society who need help, including the youth and manuncle. His achievements are numerous, including who's who in American law schools, as well as a member of the Phi Delta Kappa and Lambda Chi Alpha Sigma, Order of the Arrow, and Boy Scouts of America. He currently serves in the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. He's number 1 on the ballot, and let's hear our opening statement from Gary Rain Francis Gumatauto.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Appreciate the Guam Bar and the Winds of Water. Did you know that there's $6 million that the Attorney General is holding right now that belongs to parents, mostly mothers, that's been collected in child support but is yet to be given to them? $6 million. And this money has been building up since the 1990s, and yet it has not been reduced at all. $6 million as of today that belongs to mothers for child support, but it's not been given to them. Do you care? I care. Because if I become the AG, I'm going to make that a priority, make sure they get their money. Because mothers shouldn't be waiting for their money. Neither should the children. Thank you. Can you hear me? No. Okay.
It's on.
Okay, here we go. Did you know that when mothers call into the child support division, they get this telephone purgatory? They can't reach a human being. It's always some kind of electronic. And I've tried that myself, and I can't get through. And it should be a system where that they call in, they get some kind of a live person right away. They get a name, they get a complaint number. They tell the person what they need. And then within 48 hours, they should be told the response that they're looking for. And if not, somebody in management needs to contact them back. And if not by then the AG himself or herself should be calling them back. This is not happening. It's not happening at all. Do you care? I care. Did you know that Guam has one of the highest enlistment rates for military across the country? And yet we provide no services at all, no legal services at all for our veterans. We have a veterans office down in Antigua, but we don't staff it with an attorney. There are a lot of veterans today that are trying to proceed against the government for Agent Orange claims, also for their VA benefits, and they're not getting any help at all. I think the AG's office needs to pitch in and help out. It's also with SECRA, and it's also with USERA. These are things that, if you're a lawyer, you should know are protections for military. But we're not doing it. Nobody's doing it for them. They need to be done. As AG, I would do it. There's approximately $1 billion that's supposedly claimed by the government of Guam that's owed to us by the federal government for compact impact. But there's been absolutely no effort by the AG's office to try to collect it. There's been nothing at all. There's been no lawsuit filed at all. Nothing. As AG, I would do that. This is the time that people have to decide whether they're going to buy groceries or gasoline. Because gasoline has jumped and everything else has jumped. except wages. Wages are stagnant. Yet the AG's office just took an increase in its budget. I think it's immoral for a government agency to take an increase in its budget when everybody else is tightening their belts. When the people of Guam have got to decide between groceries and gas, this agency is taking more than $17 million and over 223 employees. First thing I'm going to do when I get in, if I get elected, is cut that budget by 10%. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Our candidate number 2 on the ballot is Douglas Brian Keola Moylan. Doug graduated from Father Duenas High School, as well as the University of Notre Dame and Santa Clara University School of Law. He's been admitted to practice in Guam, California, and Washington, D.C., and he's been in private practice for about 28 years now, general, criminal, and civil case practitioner. He has served as a law clerk for Superior Court Judge La Morena, as staff attorney at the Superior Court, as legislative counsel to the 24th, 25th, and 26th Guam legislatures. He was a member of the Guam Election Commission and was the first elected Attorney General of Guam back in 2003. He currently is a sole practitioner with the law offices of Doug Moylan. Douglas B. Moylan, ladies and gentlemen, is candidate number 2.
Kapatid, kamusta? My name is Doug Moylan. I think that those of you who remember the controversial years back in 2003 to 2006, remember that that was the first office that required the enactment of many legislations in order to define what the office is. We're now 12 years later, 3 Attorney Generals since I served, and I believe the terrain is ready to really put that office into gear. As a practitioner for over 28 years, I've actually worked in all 3 branches of government, as Jay had pointed out. I believe that I have the most to offer you as voters and can do the best job. I respect Gary, I respect Leland, but of the 3 of us, because of my track record as an Attorney General, you don't need to relearn the wheel. I know what it takes to be an Attorney General. I know that communication with the other 2 branches will be critical for the next 4 years. And I believe that with my experience, I can bring the most to the people of Guam and voters. Experience matters. Age and experience equals wisdom. I think those of us who are old enough know that you can make mistakes. You do make mistakes when you're younger, but as you get older, you learn more and you know when to act, when to keep silent, and how to act. I offer a new and better era to have the Attorney General actually work to help each one of you. What I've learned in the first 4 years was that the Attorney General has to focus more on what makes your lives better. Somewhat like a politician, but we're the guys that have to go into court and fight things out. It's not a kiss the babies, shake people's hand type position. You're controversial, you're an attorney, and what is the type of attorney that you want? You want the pit bull. You want the guy that's not going to turn over when he goes before that court hearing. You want the guy that's going to appeal it up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and that's what I did. We started in 2003, we ended in 2006, and that case won in 2007. We showed the governor that you have to follow the law. It wasn't out of pride, but it was out of principle. And that's the same principle where I think the Attorney General in the next 4 years will help bring what that office was intended to be. I see Congressman Underwood there. He was the enactor of the Elected Attorney Generals Act to put that into the Organic Act and give us the same footing as the governor. If elected, I have 5 items that are on my priority list. The first one is increasing child support collections. As Gary pointed out, I'm the one that switched that office and made all those investigators contact every child support recipient and require the child support recipients get a survey that if you are not getting your case heard, that I will be notified. It went right to me. I'm also the one that increased the child support with Bobby Cepeda, who was the child support deputy in charge. Child support was higher than it ever was collected in the past. If elected, I intend to bring back the delinquency list and the non-locatables list that will be published. But it's not just a mean list that you put out that you're not paying your child support. Back then, and what I intend to do again, is give those people the opportunity to make amends with the courts and make sure they're back on track and paying those supports. Because if they don't pay support, you pay support through your welfare and your taxes. Women that should get that support, men that should get that support, that are custodial parents, don't have to and should not be going to the government to get that support. Deport criminals. Some of you may say, well, that's un-American, it's non-hospitable, it's inconsistent with our island way of life. No. To be a U.S. citizen is a privilege. Anyone who enters our island, even though the federal government has opened it up, is here as a privilege. You violate that privilege, you are not a U.S. citizen, your rights are very limited, we send you back. As an Attorney General, I will work with the Governor and the Department of Homeland Security to send those people back. So those that offend the law should not be among us. Our children should have that opportunity to be all that they can be. Prosecute corrupt officials. I don't have to say more than that. 4 years, we prosecuted as many government corruption cases as we could. We came down with 26 convictions. We went to trial 4 times. Before your juries, we won 3 of the 4. And the AG should be able to prosecute cases. My history is, I've tried in my 28 years, criminal and civil cases. I've been before the Federal District Court, the Superior Court of Guam, the Guam Supreme Court. I argued before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and we ended up with the U.S. Supreme Court victory. It's not easy to get before the U.S. Supreme Court, but they saw our cause as a just one, and they ruled in our favor. In your favor, the people of Guam. Prosecute sex crimes against women and children. We're having too many sex crimes hit the books, hit the court system. We have to do more. And finally, promote sustainable military buildup. Anything the AG's office can do to increase the facilitation of our military, the better. The only 2 forms of economy that I've seen in my lifetime has been tourism and military. With Korea, China's building those islands and the reefs and so forth. Guam is and always been the most important U.S. soil. We are a carrier. We cannot launch bombers from aircraft carriers. They need Guam. And at the end, I will give you a few more initiatives that we will be presenting if elected as Attorney General. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Number 3 on our ballot is Lieutenant Camacho. Lieven is a proud graduate of the Guam public school system, having attended and graduated from John F. Kennedy High School. He attended the University of Washington, and after graduating from there, he graduated from the Boston University School of Law. He clerked for the Supreme Court of Guam before entering in private practice. He has been a private practitioner for the past 12 years, 7 years as a solo practitioner. He's handled more than 100 criminal cases and over 15 Supreme Court of Guam appeals. He has assisted the governments of Guam and the CNMI in reviewing complex environmental impact studies. He's also litigated several land rights and environmental justice cases, including a lawsuit to stop the construction of the firing range complex over Pagat Village, and the case challenging the proposed development of a high-rise tower in southern Guam. He is also local counsel in the national lawsuit seeking to extend voting rights to U.S. citizens living in the territories. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant Camacho.
Day. The first thing, Nana, if you're watching, I'm sorry I didn't shave. I cut my face, this is why I have a ridiculous bandage on, and I didn't want to have a random patch of hair, and the rest of my face was clean shaven. So, Day. As Jay mentioned, my name is Lieutenant Camacho, and I'm the 3rd candidate on the ballot. I want to talk to you today about motive. Okay? Motive is one of those things that we hear about in law, but I think most people understand. Why do people do things? Right? So when you hear about a crime of passion, they were acting because they were angry. They were acting because they were greedy. Right? And one of the most common questions that I've been asked is, what would possess you to run for the office of the Attorney General? And this is the truth. I see day to day how important the services are provided by the Office of the Attorney General, whether you're a victim of crime, whether you're receiving child support, whether you're a private contractor and you're having to deal with agencies. And I know that I can do a good job if I was elected. And it's not clever, and it's not a bullet point list, but that's the truth. And this is where I think being genuine is much more important than trying to be clever or trying to be witty. Now, why do I want to run for Attorney General? Because there are lots of people who want to do good things for Guam. And the reality is, with the budget that was just passed by the legislature, the next elected Attorney General will learn to do less with, will need to do more with less, okay? It was passed, it still hasn't been approved by the governor. $14.7 million was appropriated. That's $1.5 million less than what was appropriated last year. $1.5 million. Whoever is elected will have to go into that office and try to implement some of the things that we're talking about today. I could give you a wish list of all the things that I would do if I was elected, but again, the reality is $1.5 million less. How do we improve the services to the people of Guam working within that budget? That's the challenge. So the two things I will focus on are accountability and efficiency. Okay. Accountability, first we start with external accountability. Who does the Office of the Attorney General represent? The people of Guam and the government of Guam. So external accountability, we need to look at the agencies and see what can we do so they're providing services more efficiently, better. And I'm looking at the developments of standard operating procedures, training materials. There are certain things like the open government law where every agency needs to follow it. We need to make sure that any board member who takes a seat understands the basic knowledge of how that works. Sunshine law, we've seen numerous lawsuits or requests filed. What training do we have or can we provide to the agencies and to the directors to make sure they understand what those laws are? Okay. If we can do that and take some of the work away from the AG's office and give it back to the agencies to resolve a question that may go beyond what's required for disclosure under the Sunshine Law, that's a win. And now an attorney can focus on doing the work that is going to impact the people of Guam. All right. Internal accountability, I'm talking about goal setting. All right. I'm talking about SOPs internally. We know that when someone comes in as a new prosecutor, what tools do we give them to succeed? What resources do we give them to succeed? What goals are we setting within that agency? Child support, we talked about child support. You know, that $5 million didn't come out of nowhere. The OPA is in reports 2003 and 2006, and in that period of time, it increased by $1 million. Okay? That's in 2006. It was at $6.5 million. It's come down, I think, to around $5 million. We need to do more to get that money back to the parents who pay that. All right? But what does the Office of the Attorney General say? They need to hire someone to do it. They need to have an independent financial person go in and figure out how do we know where this money is and how do we give it back to the rightful people. Okay? Again, where do we find the resources? But those are the kinds of things that you need to look at developing procedures in. Right? And efficiency. I'm a big fan of technology. And I think technology is a way that we can achieve better communication with the community. Because the biggest complaint against attorneys is that they don't communicate with their clients. You could be doing a great job, but if your client doesn't know that, they can be upset with you. So how can we use technology? Attorney Gumatata mentioned child support. What can we use technology to let clients know about what's going on with their cases? What can we do for victims of crime to let them know what the processes are going to be? So again, what can we do within the budget, within that $14.7 million to improve the relationship with the people of Guam, with the government of Guam, and still carry out these essential functions? And that's what I offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. We're going to do a round of 1-minute questions, beginning with Gary Gumatauta. Gary, do you think the AG position should continue to be an elected one? What aspects of the Attorney General's office do you think work well now? And what aspects do you think require some change?
You know, this question has been bandied around for some time. And several governors would prefer that the AG was appointed by the governor. And certainly in the past where we see that AGs are not cooperating with the governor, not providing solicitor services to the agencies, then they would be correct in saying that they need to have more control over the AG. But then those situations where we're not seeing prosecutions that we want to see, then you have to wonder what kind of political control or sway is coming into play to prevent those. Just like right now we're seeing where the Lieutenant Governor committed felonies and yet nothing's being done about it. So what kind of sway is this governor have over the current AG that nothing's happening? So I think it should stay elected. But you might even want to consider an elected prosecutor.
Thank you, Gary. Doug, do you think the AG should continue to be elected? What aspects work and what aspects don't?
Jay, that's a funny question because they were trying to get me thrown out in the first 4 years there. And there was probably more legislation that was passed after I left office to restrict the Attorney General's powers than when I first came in. The Attorney General is elected pursuant to the Organic Act that says the legislature can set whether it's elected or not. The legislature, in their infinite wisdom, has not decided to make it appointed. So at this point, I would actually ask Congress to make it elected by Organic Act statute. Although we trust the politicians on Guam to not change the elected status back to an appointed status, that would be the best protection for the AG's office. Now, practically speaking, you don't want an Attorney General to be appointed. Guam is with the majority of most every state in the United States, and there's only 3 that have prosecution, and I believe 3 that have prosecution and civil authority. They call them district attorneys in many of the states because of the size, but Guam needs to keep it consistent with the majority democracy.
Thanks, Doug. Stephen.
Thank you. So my mom was president as a teacher. My dad's in the Army, and the only way that someone like me could ever become the Attorney General is if it was an elected position. I don't come from a political family. I don't have the political backing. I'm really relying on just regular people to support and to really hold people accountable. So should the position remain elected? Absolutely, because that's the only way that you're going to know. You're not going to just have political insider after political insider after political insider holding that position and just following whatever the governor wants. This is the only way that anyone, whether you're a JFK graduate, whether you went to the most prestigious high school or university, as long as you care about the island and you have the guts to stand up and run for office, that's what it's all about. So I obviously support it, otherwise I wouldn't be on the stage. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. We're going to take a pause right now for a commercial break. What specific qualifications do you bring with you to enable you to perform the duties and responsibilities of the Attorney General of Guam?
You know, this is really one of those questions where I have fought for the people of Guam, all right? And not in my professional capacity, or I've used my degree, but I've done it through pro bono work. Okay? So I'm talking specifically about our lawsuits against the federal government when they failed to comply with NEPA, when they failed to comply with the National Historic Preservation Act. Okay? So someone who, when we get paid to represent a client, that's your job, okay? The way that I look at leaders, what do you do on your spare time? What do you do with your life? All right. And those people who are committed to serving the people of Guam after they've worked from 8 to 5, balancing that with their family lives, those are the people that you want in office. Okay. So I may not have 25 or 30 years of experience, but there's a big difference between experience and leadership. So what I bring to the table, if I am elected the Attorney General, is a perspective on leadership and empowering the employees, not just firing everybody. You know, people like to do their jobs. They care about the people of Guam. They want to do their jobs well. How do we empower those people, get their buy-in to work for you and to work for the people of Guam? How do we get them excited about it? So I have, again, I'm very interested in efficiency, technology, but that's the approach that I bring if I am elected the Attorney General. Thanks.
Thanks, Doug. Sticking ahead, because the next one goes to Doug. Same question, Doug. What specific qualifications do you bring with you to enable you to perform the duties?
Thank you. Part of the Attorney General's job is public service. So looking at the candidate's history of public service, I believe, is one of the most important things you have to look at. First of all, I went to law school on your tax dollar. At UOG, I was availed to the Professional Technical Award and went to law school for 3 years, in part because of the territory of Guam and the trust that UOG had in me. The first thing that I started doing was working for the government of Guam. I was the staff attorney, law clerk for the presiding judge, Senator, Speaker B.J. Cruz, I clerked for him. I was a small claims referee for several years. I see Senator Lulian Guerrero here. She was instrumental in my being part of the Legislative Council for 3 years, the 24th, 25th, 26th Guam Legislature, which I submit to you as a public service. Anyone that's in that legislature is there for public service because you don't spend that many hours doing what those people do and get paid a fair wage. After that, I also served on the Guam Election Commission for, I can't even count how many elections, maybe for 6 years, 3 different terms. And it culminated with that service to you as the Attorney General. The first elected office, I was fortunate enough to be trusted with that position. I would submit to you respectfully as voters that of the 3 candidates, my background, my training, my experience will help me best serve you as the voters, the people that will benefit or be hurt by an Attorney General in the performance of their duties. You have a 4-year track record from us. And again, I just get the culmination. We won before the U.S. Supreme Court. Among lawyers, enough said. Among you, it helped you because it told the government officials, stop borrowing because you're going to destroy yourselves like Puerto Rico is. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Gary, what specific qualifications do you bring to the position?
Actually, this is my 30th year of practicing law. So when your introduction was 25, I think that came off my website. It's old. So 30 years of practicing law. I ran out an equipment company for 13 years. Out of an equipment company, I made a lot of money working for them, so I'm not in this game for money anymore. I was a manager for Hilton and Holiday Inn. I worked for Hilton and Holiday Inn Corporate before I came back out to Guam. I came to Guam in 1981, and I walked across the picket line. So some of you might be old enough to remember the teacher's strike. I walked right across the picket line to go to work at Guam Community College. And it was shortly after that that the entire labor issue resolved itself. And it was the 32 teachers that I worked for that voted me in as chairman for 4 years, even though I had walked across the line against their principles. And it says a lot, I think, over the kind of person I've become. Because I learned a lot about how people are, and I learned how to serve people. I learned that to be a manager, a good manager, you need to find out what makes your people tick. And you need to be the one to provide them with the tools and the way to get the job done. I've served on various boards. I've served on boards for tour companies on Guam. I started a radio station in Guam. I started a limousine service in Guam. I'm basically a businessman and a lawyer. I've also been the school board's lawyer several times. That hasn't always turned out nice, but I've done it. And that's the biggest agency of the government in Guam. So I've got the experience that it takes to administer an agency. I can handle a $17 million agency. I own an equipment company was a lot more than that. There's no problem. I can get the job done. So I think I'm qualified to get it done, but more importantly, I've got the love. I've got the love that it takes to get the job done. I'm Chamorro. I'm actually Chamalinian, so my blood not only is from Guam, but from the outer islands as well as a lot of other Chamorros that are out here that don't want to admit it. My daughter's Filipina, so we cross all the boundaries here in Guam. So I'll take care of all the people in Guam because my heart's in it.
Thanks, Gary. Our next question is a 2-minute question, starting with Gary again. Federal receivership continues over the Luzon landfill. Compact impact issues continue to arise. The native inhabitant vote is on appeal. Some support challenging the environmental impact statements for the military buildup. Do you believe that it is a good expenditure of taxpayer funds for the Office of the Attorney General to pursue or to defend these types of cases against the federal government? Gary.
I'm very concerned about whether or not we're in the right forum in dealing with the federal government on these many issues. And I realize that by law, that the federal court has the jurisdiction. But since we're a colony, and we've been recognized as a colony of the United States by the United Nations, then perhaps we'd be better served to be in the world court instead of in the federal court. Because I feel like that we're the slave going to the master asking for a morsel. And that's exactly what we're getting every time we go up there. We get knocked back, we get knocked back, we get knocked back. We're spending a lot of time, a lot of money there. I think we need a new, more creative approach. And one of the things I want to do is fight for reparations. You know, what they're giving us is our own money back. You know, and they've limited who gets it. It doesn't work. We're not taking care of everybody here. What about the other people that live here in Guam that they've suffered and their ancestors suffered during the war? Nobody's done anything about them. What about the Filipinos and the Outer Islanders and the Chamorros that died already, that left kin here, that are not going to collect anything? Because you have to be alive to collect under the current plan. So I think when you take it all, embrace it. One of the things we might want to do is go to the World Court.
Thanks, Gary. Leland, do you believe it's a good expenditure of taxpayer funds for the Attorney General to pursue or to defend litigation involving the federal government?
Thank you, Jay. No one is above the law, and not even the federal government. And I think really the question is whether or not the Office of the Attorney General should be using resources to defend cases filed by the federal government. Absolutely. That's what you're supposed to do. Statutorily, the Office of the Attorney General is there to defend the government of Guam in litigation. 2 examples of that, are the plebiscite case, which is before the 9th Circuit. Should we expend those resources? Yes. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to defend the policy initiatives that the people of Guam have enacted through their legislature. The other cases pending before the federal court, with the federal government involved, is the Chamorro Land Trust Program. And it has its own issues internally, but whether or not it's a program that should be defended in federal court in a suit brought by the Department of Justice, absolutely. That is what the Office of the Attorney General is supposed to do. Now, I was part of a lawsuit against the federal government with NEPA and these environmental impact studies, and I can tell you, I was not paid by the government of Guam. Okay, I worked pro bono, hundreds of hours. All right, and this I want to recognize Save Southern Guam because this is what happens. You have regular citizens who have to spend their own time and resources to fight the government because it won't do its job. Okay. Now, whether or not I would initiate a case against the federal government, and that's going to depend on a lot of things. Money. We have 7 attorneys in the civil litigation division right now. Okay. Where are we going to find the money to hire people to file new lawsuits? All right. With $1.5 million less if this current budget moves forward. Okay. So obviously resources, I understand the question, should we spend resources? It's going to be on a case-by-case basis. But if there's a right case that presents itself where you can fight for the people of Guam, get fair treatment by the federal government, I would absolutely be in favor of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Doug, what about expending taxpayer money for pursuing federal litigation?
Jay, I disagree with Levin. The Attorney General is not compelled to fight any case when it's against the people of Guam's interests. That is what the elected nature of the Attorney General is. The Attorney General must decide, is it legally feasible to fight it, and is it correct to fight it? The statutes on Guam, if it's a local statute, require the Attorney General, if they disagree with the law passed by the legislature, to go to the courts and ask the court to rule on the organicity, the legality of that local law. On these issues that Leland spoke about, you cannot just say, no, we're not going to fight any of these cases, or yes, we're going to fight all of them. Every case has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. Interesting that the receivership was brought up. The receivership of what they did to Guam has been mishandled by the Attorney Generals after my office. I've talked to the Governor's Council, I've talked to other Attorney Generals. We should not be having our money taken from the general fund to pay for that ORDOT landfill when the federal government comes in and takes it. We're not a state. We're under the Properties Clause of the U.S. Constitution that says that Congress has a duty to pay for every bill of this government. If Congress wanted to, they could wipe out our entire government, Department of Interior, quite frankly, tomorrow by saying that we don't think they're running this government well, we're going to take over. That's what they did to DPW. Why is it that our federal court judge, our U.S. attorney, will put the U.S. attorney to the side, but our attorney general since then haven't said, you want to run the landfill? Then print the money out of the Department of Interior and do it. They took our general fund money. That's why we can't pay for the hospital. That's why we can't pay for our schools, because all this money is being spent by some company in Tennessee or wherever that company is. Ordering, it's nice when you have a blank check. You can run anything. But they're running us into the ground. So on a case-by-case basis, the AG must decide, and I would say in conjunction with the legislature and the governor, to decide if it is in the best interest to fight or not fight a case. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Let's take a 1-minute break. One of our senators last week called on the Attorney General to report on the status of the investigation of Lieutenant Governor Ray Tenorio, claiming that this investigation casts a cloud over upcoming elections. If you were the Attorney General, how would you respond?
Well, no one is above the law, and everyone wants to have faith that the system is going to work, no matter if it's you or me who's charged with a crime or committed a crime or is under investigation. But I think the Office of the Attorney General, Barrett Anderson, is doing the right thing. As prosecutors, you can't comment on cases that are ongoing or under investigation. I know that the people want to know what the status is, and the Attorney General can make those types of remarks. But in terms of what's going to happen, it has to be sequential. And ethically, that's the way it should happen, because everyone's entitled to a fair trial. We may not agree with it, but that's the way the system is designed. You don't want someone being tried because of a news story that's run or because of inflammatory statements or anonymous trolls on the internet. That's not the way the criminal justice system works. So I think the Attorney General, Barrett Anderson, should give an update on the status of the investigation, but I would also understand if it's under investigation. That's a perfectly ethically responsible answer to give. Thank you.
I think everybody that's met me already knows my position on this. Grab a gun, go to jail. And I mean it. Okay, this is not a game. We're talking about felonies here. We're talking about people that could be hurt. 3 times he grabbed that gun. And 3 times he waved it around. And 3 times the officer chased him down to get the gun. The gun was loaded. How do we know this? You know, Ray was on television talking about it. He gave the information to the reporter. He admitted it. Now, I love Ray. I know Ray personally. I was very close to his mother. I really do like Ray. I just saw him on Saturday. And it would pain me to have to be the one to prosecute him for this. That's why I would hope that the current AG would do the job. But if not, I will do my job, and I will do justice. So my job is to put him in the system. If a grand jury comes back with a true bill, then I will charge it out. And I will prosecute under the law and do justice. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Doug, if you were the Attorney General, how would you respond to Senator Nelson's request?
When I was the Attorney General, that was a common occurrence that occurred. You had a high-profile person get a call at 1 o'clock in the morning saying that there's a family violence case going on between these people, and I made sure that the police officers called me directly. I didn't leave it to a chief prosecutor or another attorney. And I would have to make the decision on first whether there's going to be a book and release, book and confinement, and obviously whether or not there was probable cause to begin with for that matter. With the current Lieutenant Governor, there's various issues that are involved here. Every Attorney General on Guam is a law enforcement officer. The investigators are law enforcement officers. They're allowed to carry weapons. The Governor has the authority to faithfully execute the laws of Guam under the Organic Act. There's a question about whether or not the Lieutenant Governor was given that authority, and you heard the Governor come out and say it. I gave him the authority to oversee it. I do not believe that it is responsible to say anything about what's going on until you're sitting in the chair like our chief prosecutor is there. And I would, two issues at stake. One, you're presumed innocent until proven guilty. Even up till the time that that jury goes out and deliberates, Ray is innocent until proven guilty. And I would disagree with Levin. There's no ethical rule that outright prohibits the prosecutor from talking. There are rules, but not one that says you can't talk about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Along the same lines, going over to Gary, there have been several publicized cases of public corruption or wrongdoing by agency officials, such as the Gura case. More recently, Chamorro Land Trust Commission has come under fire. Do you believe that the Office of the Attorney General should play a more proactive role in such cases? If yes, what kind of role would that be? 1 minute, please.
Well, I don't think the AG should wait until the police department decides they want to send the report over when it's on the front page of the news and everybody else is talking about it. They need to say, where's the report? Where's the investigation? And they have their own team of investigators as well. And they're all educated, they're all experienced, they know what they're doing with this, so they should get involved and get their job done. So I don't think that it's up to the AG to just wait for the report to come. Sometimes the AG's got to reach out and make that happen. And then once that they get the information, they've got to decide what to do with it. Now we know that Chamorro Land Trust has been in the paper. GDOE's been in the paper. GPD's been in the paper. The governor's office has been in the paper. People are tired of the corruption. They want something done about it. So that's our job as the AG. Do it. If you can't do it, then don't bother to go for the job.
Thanks, Aaron. Legal, do you believe the Office of the Attorney General should play a more proactive role in government corruption cases?
Yes, corruption should be prosecuted, but I also think that the AG should play a role in preventing corruption to begin with. You know, training. With the Chamorro Land Trust, it goes to show that people don't know what they're doing. And if the Office of the Attorney General can go in there and tell people, this is the way, these are what your responsibilities are first, maybe we avoid the improprieties that happened over decades of time with the Chamorro Land Trust. And I do want to make a comment. I mean, Attorney McDonald probably knows the specific rule under the prosecutor's ethics that you cannot trial publicity. It's black and white. You can't make anything. There are very specific things you can comment on, but you can't try to inflame the community and deprive someone of their right to a fair trial. Thank you, Jay.
Doug, do you believe the Attorney General should play a more proactive role in public corruption cases?
When I ran in 2002, public corruption was the top priority. When I came in, we created the Government Corruption Division, separate and apart from the General Crimes. And we actually called it the Government Corruption Division and the General Crimes Division. We separated. Government corruption is white collar. Usually the accountants, like the FBI, mainly accountant lawyers is what the FBI is primarily made of. They're structured to go after white-collar type crimes. Guam has, every community has white-collar crime. Every community has a certain amount of percentage. But as Fred Candover said, back in 2003, our percentage was greater than most communities. And I prioritized it. If elected, you're going to see that thing right back in. We're going to go after everybody that's committed a crime, the certifying officers, and I put a warning right now. Certifying officers, if they misspend that money appropriated by our good senators, like Teresa Lottie here, we're going to go after them. Retirement fund, you're going to be gone after. The Government Corruption Division is coming back, but we have other priorities as well. Thank you.
Continuing on with the topic that all of you have already brought up, child support. Child Support Enforcement Division has one of the most important responsibilities to ensure that parents and children receive their child support. What's the biggest problem facing that division, and how would you improve the collection and distribution of child support, beginning with Doug?
Child support affects every family, every person on Guam in some way. When I came into office, we increased the numbers with Bobby Cepeda, as I mentioned, and we created it not, you're going to have to pay, you're going to have to pay. We initiated the Love Your Kids program. If I come back, that's coming back too. We're also going to find out where Eric went, Eric the Eagle. We did the, and I'll have to ask Miss General Lintiaco where that bird went. That bird, that Eric the Eagle symbol, was intended to take the animosity out of a very caustic type of relationship that most people are aware of. When men are having to pay child support, which is the majority of our community, the majority gender, it's very painful because they're not only lost the mother, the child, but they have all these other issues going on. We promoted the custodial parent rule to try to encourage our father's participation. We increased the child support, and how we did it, I went after those investigators in the child support division, those ones that weren't returning calls. We had a performance standard, and that's going to come back. And the survey, by the way, that's what got me involved in knowing which investigators weren't doing their work and which attorneys needed to do more. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Gary, what's the biggest problem regarding child support, collection, distribution?
Well, I'll tell you, attitude is one of the biggest problems they've got. If you look at the website, and it goes in there in the frequently asked questions, there's a section that talks about if you're not satisfied with the services here, you know what you're supposed to do? Hire a lawyer. They tell people to hire a lawyer. But what's the government supposed to be doing with Child Support Enforcement Division? Okay, that's their job. Don't tell people to go hire a lawyer. That's what your job is at the AG's office. I'll tell you the biggest problem over there, though, with it is antiquated system. They need a new computerized system and software. They don't have it. It's going to cost a lot of money, but once they get it, they can just zip it out. This is part of what Lee was talking about with technology. We do need it in that department. I think once we've got that and we get the people trained and get the morale back up to where it ought to be, we can get the job done, number one.
It's important for any parent who's relying on those funds to get them for food, for school supplies. School starts this week. I'm sure if there are parents who are waiting, I believe that the law requires you to get it to the it was before it was non-custodial, but now even with joint physical custody, you can still pay child support. So the parent who's receiving child support should get those funds within 2 days of the Office of the Attorney General getting it. We need to develop standards, all right? But we also need to take care of the elephant in the room, which are these undistributed funds. And again, $3.7 million of that $5 million has been sitting for decades, okay? For more than 5 years. The next Attorney General needs to figure out how we can get that money back to the people who it belongs to, and if not, what steps need to be taken to handle that money, all right? So my priority would be following the recommendations of this current Attorney General to get the help to figure out who those funds belong to. Let's get that out, because that's 73% of those undistributed funds. We don't know what to do with them, all right? So efficiency and communication. Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, Steve. Let's take a break now. Take about a 1 minute break. Thank you, and going back to our next round of questions for a 1 minute answer, starting with Levin. What powers of the Attorney General would you recommend to the Legislature to change, clarify, or improve?
Wow, okay, that's I mean, right now there is, well, I don't know if this is coming up in the future, there's a bill, but in terms of clarifying what responsibilities, well, the biggest issue I can say right now would be funding. How do you expect the Office of the Attorney General to perform these services with the budget that's been allocated, right? So we talked about child support, updating those systems. We know what the problems are. But when are we going to get the money to update these systems to improve technology? One of the biggest issues in criminal prosecution is licensing. You know, if you've ever had Microsoft Word, you have a personal license. They have for the law enforcement. We can't afford the licenses so that all of our prosecutors have access to the system. That's a problem. It's not a people problem, it's not an intelligence problem, it's a money problem. But we need to look at ways that we can use technology. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are lots of other jurisdictions we can look at for cost-effective ways to improve things. But again, where are we going to find the money? Where are we going to find the people? Those are the two most important things you're going to need to run that office. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Doug, what changes would you recommend the legislature make to either change, clarify, or improve the Office of the Attorney General?
Elizabeth Barrett Anderson was an appointed Attorney General. This bill, 317-34, that was, I believe, introduced by Senator St. Augustine, is a culmination of the Attorney General's powers and duties throughout the United States. Guam took its statute as the AG being the chief legal officer from Illinois. The Supreme Court, when I was the Attorney General, ruled in the Airport versus Moylan that the AG had all the common law powers, but they didn't enumerate all of them. And they also said, most importantly, that all those common law powers are subject to the legislature's crafting, limitation, expanding, okay? So in her bill, the four most important powers, and she put everything together. This is the wish list for an Attorney General. So we don't have to go fight for years on whether or not the AG has the power to do this or that. The first, overall, there's three main goals of the Attorney General. One, protect the public interest. Two, provide uniform legal authority throughout the legal decisions, uniformity of legal opinions throughout the entire government of Guam. And number three, reduce the cost of attorneys. The four parts of this bill affect every provision that I just mentioned. It gives the Attorney General more authority to represent the entire government of Guam. It stops the autonomous agencies from hiring these million-dollar counsels. Literally, Senator Cruz, he did the Sunshine Act many times. $4 or $5 million for one law firm, compared to our law firm back then, which ran a whole year, 120 people with $7 million. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Gary?
Well, I take umbrage to something that my colleague said, and that was that, you know, we can do more with less. Because the logical conclusion of doing more with less is you can do a lot with nothing. And that doesn't happen. That's been an old mantra of the federal government. They finally got tired of it. They said it doesn't work. Being with the Coast Guard as long as I have, you know, I've already learned that it doesn't work that way. You do the best with what you've got, and at some point, you can't do any more with it. And I don't expect these people to break their backs working for the Attorney General's office to try to come up with things that can't be done because there's only 40 hours in a week. Already he's talking about he's going to have to ask for more money. Well, that's not going to be one of the things I'm looking for. I'm looking to try to get the job done within the amount of money that we're given, you know, and slice off as much as we can. If everybody else in Guam is having to tighten their belt, we're going to tighten our belt too. I think the wish list that the AG has already given to Senator St. Augustine works. My only problem with it is that I think that one part of it is inorganic. I think that it's very difficult for us to think that we're going to be able to get away with taking power away from the governor and the governor not suing us. Thank you.
Gary, what's your position regarding government agents or the governor hiring their own lawyers to represent the government of Guam? What role, if any, should the Attorney General play in the work of private counsel representing the government?
This has already been tested, and I think that Doug, at the time that he was the Attorney General, brought it to the fore about whether or not that agencies should be able to have their own attorneys, and the courts have already said that they can. Okay, so there's not going to be any argument with that unless we change the law. I think the biggest problem we're having right now is the billing practices we're seeing. The airport's charging $500,000 to $1 million. The Port Authority, the lawyer there is charging millions of dollars. Okay, nobody's looking at their bill. Absolutely nobody looks at the bill. They just pay the bill. Where else have you ever worked where somebody just took your bill and just paid it? Imagine millions of dollars, and they just pay the bill. They don't look. At one point, the lawyer charged more than 24 hours in a day. and yet he got his bill paid. So I think that's the biggest problem we're having right now with this kind of issue, is trying to make it so that the bills are consistent and proper, and I think perhaps that should be reviewed by maybe the public auditor. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Doug, what's your position regarding government of Guam, lawyers, government of Guam agencies, or the governor himself being represented by private lawyers, and what role should the Office of the Attorney General play in either supervising their work or monitoring their work?
The bill I mentioned seeks to address that. Whether or not the legislature and the governor are going to agree to it, the governor's probably going to veto it, because he has always enjoyed that direct control over these individuals and law firms who he's hired in the autonomous agencies, not the departments, but in the autonomous agencies. The statute says that the autonomous agencies can hire their own counsel. Supreme Court has said that that is the limitation on your power, Mr. Attorney General, or Madam Attorney General, and if that law passes, that'll be corrected. But those three things that I mentioned in the beginning, the public interest, reduced legal fees, and uniform legal policy throughout the government, the people benefit when your elected official, the AG, decides what the uniform legal policy is. In the autonomous agencies, you're having these hired guns paying by the hour. AGs, we don't get paid by the hour, we get straight salaries, that are deciding your decisions as a government. The Port Authority of Guam, the Airport Authority, you name all these cash cows that the government has, those guys and their boards are deciding what legal authority is being effectuated. When you hired the Attorney General is the chief legal officer of the government of Guam. But apparently the legislature hasn't come to grips yet with what is the government of Guam. And until they do that, and I'm not going to fight it any further until the senators decide what they would do if I was fortunate to come back in.
Thanks, Doug. Leland, your comments on the role of the Attorney General in the work of private counsel representing the government.
No one likes to pay attorneys' fees, so that includes the government of Guam. So I can recognize the advantage of having some kind of cost-saving measure for attorneys' fees for these autonomous agencies. The other thing that I think is important is accountability. So this is an elected position, so if you don't necessarily agree with the decision that's made at an agency, your recourse is you vote. Okay? You vote for the people who are going to have your interests at heart when they're representing these different government agencies. But I keep coming back to this. You have 12 people in Solicitor's Division, okay? You have 7 in civil litigation, that's 19 lawyers, who are currently representing the entire government of Guam. Right? Where are we going to find the money and the personnel to handle these additional agencies and these additional responsibilities? So I'm in favor of it. The other thing that I think is to caution is that the legislature still has on the books authorized agencies to hire their own attorneys. So you can't just pass a bill saying the AG is now the chief legal officer. That's it. You need to go out and clean the books and make sure it's clear that now I am the attorney for these different agencies. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Leland. With all our little breaks, we've exceeded our time limit, and so we're going to go right to the closing statements. Each of you has about a minute to give your pitch, and we'll begin with Leland.
Thank you, Jay. I'd like to thank my wife for being here today. She really is the only reason why I've been able to run for this election, this position. My mom is here and she's present, and I'm just grateful to have them both in my life. My dad as well, who's in Hawaii, maybe watching right now. Details matter, okay? I can stand up here and tell you, again, this is what we need to fix this is what we need to fix that, but the details matter, right? Leadership matters. Okay? A leader with experience is a great leader, but having lots of experience doesn't make you a great leader. So what I offer is an attention to detail, a work ethic, and a willingness to fight for the people of Guam, and I've demonstrated that through my record. All right? I will rest on my record. I don't need to stand up here and give you rhetoric. Look at what I've done for the people of Guam, with the great help of people like Lasia, who's here, the Guam Preservation Trust, We Are Guahan. People care about this community, and they need someone who's like them, who's willing to stand up, not to collect a paycheck, because they know that they have families here, that this is their home, and they want to make sure that their kids want to come back and live here and create a better life for everybody. So leadership, efficiency, and accountability, those are the 3 things that I offer, and I'm number 3 on the ballot, Leland Untitled Chapter. Thank you.
Thank you, Leland. Doug Moylan.
First, 100-day initiatives. 1, prosecute those not paying retirement fund. Assign prosecutors to prosecute tax crimes for non-payment of civil and criminally tax cases. 3, assign attorneys to work at DRT to bring in more money for the Guam coffers. 4, prosecute, if warranted, the land trust investigation, cigarette tax evasion, government office pay raises, 2-month gun incident. 5, put to use the $6 million in child support funds. First, find out whose money it is. Second, if we can't find it out, ask it to the government of Guam so the legislature can pass a law that allows that money to be put into a trust managed by Buildup so that we can take the money where the AG and the governor possibly decide what benefit the children can have from that. Use that money as a corpus as opposed to it sitting in the bank. And by the way, prosecute anyone that has touched that money, including the governor. That money, according to reports earlier, was tapped into by the Department of Administration. It wasn't the government's money. It was the children's money. Get the government to go after, get the AG's office to go after the federal government to pay the receivership. Go after that money that we've had to pay over these past few years. Eliminate waste and inefficiency in the AG's office. You trusted me in the past to be your Attorney General. I humbly request for your trust in me again. I can do the job. I have other opportunities, but at this time in my life, I'm 51 years old, and I believe that I can better serve our community, my children, or all of our children, if I was to be given that opportunity to be in the AG's office once again. I did what I said I was going to do. I'll continue doing what I say I'm going to do. I made promises, and I don't think there's anyone that can say I didn't do what I promised back in 2002. Bring back law and order and respect for our community. Thank you. Tizu Smasi and Maraming Salamat po.
Thank you, guys. Gary Matata. You're on.
Thank you. Well, you've heard it from all of us, and all three of us, I think, have shown the community that we're good lawyers, and we're concerned about trying to serve our community. And I think what distinguishes me from the others is I've got a lot of experience. At 30 years as an attorney, I've served in the military. You know, I've also given a lot of time, my work with the Coast Guard is 100% voluntary because I'm with the auxiliary. The work I do with the Boy Scouts, the work I've done with March of Dimes in the mainland, with the Red Cross, things like that, that's all community service. And every time that I meet with somebody that's poor or somebody that's a senior citizen that can't take care of themselves, I give pro bono work. I don't keep track of that. I'm not putting signs up to tell people, oh, look at Frank Matata, he's doing this for the public. I do it because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for my community. And I want to do that as the Attorney General. I want to be your Attorney General, and I want to serve all the people of Guam, no matter where they're from. Thank you.
The Guam Bar Association is pleased to present this event to you. We thank all our members who submitted all of the questions. I didn't even have to write any of them out. They were submitted by all of our members. And thank you all very much. Please get out there and vote.